Good afternoon. As we previously disclosed, on September 26th, we reached a revised agreement to settle all claims asserted in the Lee UFC antitrust lawsuit for $375 million. In the third quarter, we recorded an incremental $40 million charge to bring the aggregate expense on our books to $375 million. On October 22nd, the court granted preliminary approval of the settlement. As a result, we made the first of three payments for $125 million into escrow in late October. We expect to pay the remaining $250 million in 2025, $125 in the first quarter, and $125 by the end of Q2. As we've mentioned, the settlement is anticipated to be deductible for tax purposes as and when paid. As a result, our tax distributions to members in the third quarter were reduced to reflect the settlement payment such that we didn't realize an adverse dollar-for-dollar impact to cash on hand.
I've been thinking a lot about how different the approach to distributing your top content is between WWE and UFC right now. For WWE, the PLEs, you're going with the broadest possible reach on Netflix and Peacock. There's no discrete transaction to watch your content, but on UFC, you're in this high-cost pay-per-view model. And you've said, and I think you maybe alluded to it with the last answer, you don't want to shake anything up, really, and you prefer to re-up your deal with Disney. Why is the continuation of a pay-per-view model the best path, especially given how MMA is still in its relative infancy compared to wrestling?
Yeah, look, I would just tell you, Brandon, I mean, just a reminder, obviously, internationally, we sell pay-per-view for the UFC, but we do not sell the pay-per-view domestically. That's ESPN's job. And what I can tell you as we enter into these negotiations, at the end of the day, it's what the market will bear. That's really what it is. And we're next up. We're the next big thing on the block, if you will. We have a proven track record. Our demos are insane. I mean, really just across TKO, where 50% of our audience is 18 to 34, which is what most platforms and companies are chasing. So we're in good stead there. We have terrific diversification, and we drive a very strong Hispanic audience when it comes to the UFC. And we're gender neutral. And we're not just talking about women watching women's fights. That's not the case. We have a strong base of women watching all of our fights. So we're sitting in a pretty good position. Pay-per-view is still a strong model. It worked to build ESPN Plus. It's worked for us internationally. We've got great history with it. DirecTV and Dish may be coming together, so who knows the kind of opportunity there. Paramount and CBS are obviously getting their act together. They'll be closing next year. I believe they'll be at the table if and when it comes to them, because they've already signaled, both Jeff Shell and David Ellison, that sports will be a banner vehicle of content for them. So we will not have a shortage of suitors. We feel great, but we love Disney. I can't underscore it enough. And Jimmy Pitaro and Bob Iger get UFC, and very much were architects in our deal. Kevin Mayer was still at the time, but they were very much part of us crafting how we were going to do that deal. Things change, models change, viewing patterns change. Broadcast is now kind of back in, if you will. Cable is obviously having its struggles, but still nothing to frown at. And streaming is on fire, and new platforms and fast channels are coming all the time. So it's really just demonstrating and signaling to the market that we have flexibility and a willingness to play ball on a myriad of business models. And Ari and I in particular are very focused on not just communicating that, but actively discussing those potential models with all of the partners and then some.
Okay. And then Dana White recently talked about getting into boxing and said that it would be with a quote, guns blazing. Can you expand on that? Just wondering how this can be done in a way that's in sync with your current margin profile. And will this happen organically by perhaps letting UFC fighters box under your banner? Or is this one of those instances where we could see some M&A at play?
Yeah, no, look, first of all, some off the cuff comments from Dana White do not translate into a strategy that we're communicating to the street, right? Dana says a lot of things and has a lot of passions, and that's why we love him. He's also the best promoter the sport of MMA, and frankly, if it was boxing, has or will ever see. What I can tell you is boxing at its best is confused and fragmented. At its worst, it's broken. And we think the sport presents an interesting growth opportunity for us. Dana White, and I should mention Nick Khan, have deep expertise and long-standing relationships in what they call the sweet science, otherwise known as boxing. And if we were to get involved in boxing, we would expect to do so in an organic way, not an M&A way. So, i.e., we're not writing a check. And if we launch the vertical at any time, we kind of see it as doing it with a partner who would fund it and pay us to operate. So nothing to announce today, but this is one area we're going to continue to explore. We've talked about the dearth of leagues that are out there. Obviously, we're acquiring PBR. There's not much else. We don't necessarily need to add anything to our model, but boxing is ripe. It is ripe for a fix, and we're blessed to have two experts in the field. And if an opportunity presents itself, or we can chase one down that does not put much risk, or any risk for that matter, on us financially, then we're going to pursue it. And in terms of models and league and how we structure it, and et cetera, that's way down the road. And once we have something, if we have something, you'll be the first to know.
Maybe just following up on the UFC renewal, Mark, interested to know how you're positioning UFC Fight Pass potentially as part of negotiations. Last time that was kept separate. Is that the intention this time around, or is there kind of an opportunity to roll the service or content into a partner platform and receive better economics? And then just staying with UFC, wanted to know you're thinking about title sponsorship as potential inventory. Was the Sphere kind of a unique one-off, or can you make more use of the pay-per-views ahead?
Yeah, thanks, David. Look, I'll tell you, as we sit here today, we're really pleased with the growth of UFC Fight Pass. In fact, internationally, we're really seeing subs tick up, especially in Brazil, where we finally got our act together after a slow start. We see keeping that separate. I'll tell you that there is truly untapped potential when it comes to UFC Fight Pass. And the secret to driving subs on UFC Fight Pass is just quite simply more live events, period, end of story. And so in any renewal, we're going to explore the ability for us to potentially have exclusive fights on UFC Fight Pass, but then also lean further into the combat space with regard to karate, jiu-jitsu, wrestling itself, boxing potentially, more live events that we can program around the clock that really drive demand in terms of sub acquisition and fan base. So to answer your question, we expect to keep that as a proprietary asset that we control. It's not for sale, but it will have more original content, less taped programming, and more live events. That's the first part. As regard to the second, the title sponsors, look, yes, that was a tremendous deal we did with Riyadh Season and the Saudis to sponsor the Sphere event. I think everybody got a good deal out of that one because that was, such a spectacle for them and for us. And if there are opportunities to sell more title sponsors, we're going to pursue them. And I can tell you, in the bag of inventory that Grant Norris-Jones, who runs our global partnerships team, and his lieutenant, Lou Cascavalis, as they go to the street, door to door, brand to brand, category to category, knocking down business, which I'll remind you, is almost kicking the door of $300 million this year between UFC and WWE. So we're heading north fast. They will absolutely deploy title sponsorship inventory if it makes sense. It has to be authentic. It has to be seamless. And we certainly don't want to over commercialize the UFC. But I think it was a pretty good suit and a good fit as it relates to the Sphere event.
Mark, in the past, you've spoken about the impact the Sphere event has had on the UFC brand. I'm curious now, post-Sphere, how you're thinking about the evolution of some of these more key UFC events that you put on, maybe the opportunities to elevate more select pay-per-view fights, perhaps essentially through a Sphere-like event in the future, or perhaps even through stadium-like events that you host on the WWE side, similar to WrestleMania.
Great. So first off, I just want to remind everyone that we do not intend to do another event at the Sphere. That was a one and done. I think we've signaled that to the market. Of course, anything can change, just like rock bands do their farewell tours and seem to stick around for another 20 years. But Dana is pretty intent that this was a one and done. That's why we spent so much. That's why we made so much out of it. By the way, it took a lot out of us in terms of focus to pull it off in the way we did. But in terms of creating more spectacles, like that's our job, period. And globally, that's our job. And frankly, much of that responsibility to create those spectacles falls to Lawrence Epstein, who's running the UFC business with Dana day to day. Lawrence happens to be in the room, and I'd like him to opine on and comment on your first part of the question. Lawrence?
Thanks, Mark. Just a couple of things to add to what Mark just had to say. First of all, huge achievement. Certainly was a challenge, as Mark indicated, but a huge achievement for our UFC team to put on that. What we view as really a seminal event in the history of sports and entertainment. It's the first time anything like this has ever been done in the world of sport, the world of entertainment, and the entire world is really looking at this event. So huge achievement, huge success for our entire team. It's really, I think, part of our be first mentality. We're the first group to ever do this. Maybe we'll be the only one, but we're certainly the first so far. And, we're really proud of the achievement and, of course, the leadership that we showed. And as I said, this event was a game changer. I think as we look at future events and as arenas, and I'll coin this term, sphereize themselves, add more LED, add more technology to their facilities, we're going to continue to up the game with respect to our production. The first facility that has really done this outside the Sphere, of course, is the Intuit Dome in California, where the Clippers are going to be playing. And you can expect to see us there very soon, taking advantage of that great technology there.
By the way, last time I checked, the Sphere is launching in Abu Dhabi. Dana did say no more events at the Sphere in Vegas, but that doesn't mean we can't go to Abu Dhabi. So I'm looking forward to pursuing that when that gets built, probably 2 decades from now.
Separately, if you just comment on the environment for hiring and retaining talent, it's just amazing. A year ago, we were being asked to model the impact on talent costs of the equity capital raised by one of your competitors, and that doesn't come up anymore. So if you could update us there, it would be great. Thank you.
The reason why you don't hear about it a lot, and we say this in all modesty, you don't hear about it because of the work of Paul Levesque and Dana White and Nick Khan and Lawrence Epstein. That's just fact of the matter. They are experts in storytelling, period. They are experts in creating rivalries, period. They are experts, like David Stern was, in building and marketing stars. And when your platforms, when your businesses, when your leagues become known for that, talent aspires to be with those leagues. So we haven't had those challenges as of late because, frankly, the talent wants to get to the UFC and WWE level. Now, we don't take that for granted. We're not arrogant about it, and we want to incentivize all of our fighters at the UFC and all of our superstars at the WWE to put out their best every day, and aim for the top of the mountain. But we're prudent about it, and we want to keep those costs under control. And as long as we do our job of continuing with that storytelling, continuing to build our fan base, continuing to surround ourselves with the right partners, then talent will gravitate towards the UFC and the WWE.